What's up, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to talk about why there's going to be something very big for NIO next week. I'm going to break down what's happening with the markets moving forward, approaching next week, and how things are looking, in my opinion, on all these different charts. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends very soon in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening with the market. So, as far as NIO goes, I wanted to mention that right now we're seeing a lot of buyers who are defending the 4.3 area for the share price. And as this thing gets very close to 5 and then also around 5.5, we do tend to reject. So this is the range we're in so far. There's a bit of a downtrend on NIO, which could lead to a little bit more downside. However, we're going to be watching this support to see if we could hold this. And at the same time, we do have a big catalyst that could affect whether or not we get a bounce. So right now, at the time I'm recording this video, it's actually about December 14th in China. So their time is ahead of us here in the US. So what that means is for December 21st, it's going to be basically about 1 week from now, at least given the Chinese time. And that means that that's when the next NIO Day is going to be, their 10th anniversary. This could be pretty historic for them as they're going to be holding a very, very big event. Now, they're going to be talking about their ambitions, their growth potential, and their plans to expand their factories. This could be very, very big for them as time goes on. They have over 600,000 users around the world as they've sold, hundreds of thousands of their vehicles. And I think that's as time goes on, they're going to continue to not only see a lot of growth, but they're going to plan on expanding their innovation as time goes on. We're going to be learning more about Envda and what their plans are and what their goals are for the upcoming year, how they're planning on doubling their overall capacities. Now, I didn't really see anything new in terms of our ratings. We still have a sell rating from Goldman Sachs. Price-price ratio is still down. But one thing worth mentioning is that there are a lot of buying opportunities for the long term that still perpetuate. This is not necessarily a sprint or more of a marathon, at least buying into this company. The long term has a lot of potential despite some short term difficulties in terms of our interest rates and such. But one thing that's very important is the fact that they're planning on expanding a lot, especially during the second half of next year. And they're planning on being able to deliver over 20,000 vehicles for just the Envda brand itself. And they plan on doubling their sales in 2025 as a whole. So the big catalyst coming out for the short term will be this. Firstly, we have important news coming out involving NIO Day, and then we have the deliveries coming out for the month of December. That's going to give us more insights on what's happening for the entire year, and then for next year, we'll see if NIO breaks the quarterly record and if we get a very strong December. If that's the case, we're going to be looking for a big improvement, and that could help the share price start to run. I also believe that the share price is in a very decent place right now because of the fact that we're approaching the support zone. So I'm hoping we do get a bounce very close to this level. So we could drop another like 15 to 20 cents, but once we hit those lows, there is going to be a lot of potential for some kind of bounce. Now, for the broader markets going into next week, I just want to call out there's another catalyst. For Monday, we just have PMI data, which is not that significant. Tuesday has a lot of manufacturing numbers that could cause some volatility. But then the big thing is going to be Wednesday as we have the FOMC meeting. That's when Jerome Powell, the big guy, is going to be giving a speech. And we'll see if the Fed gives us a 25 basis point cut or not. That's what the market's going to be looking for. Then we have PCE data after that. So quite a bit of data next week is going to be very heavy, especially towards the middle of the week. Besides that, there's not much going on. There are a lot of shorts expiring for next Friday, but there's not anything else that's too crazy that's going on. I also want to mention that for earnings, we have a couple of them coming out. Everything is quite minor for next week as we get very close to Christmas period. And then lastly, the market is still quite neutral. We're not super bearish or super bullish. We're just stuck in the middle. So for NIO, we could dip a little bit more next week to the 4.3 area. But once we have those big catalysts from NIO Day, not to mention deliveries in just a couple of weeks, we could be looking for a big improvement in the share price action. For SPY, we're barely riding our 4-hour 50 EMA around the 603 area. If that fails us, it is possible to dip a little bit lower, all the way down towards 601, then 600. And lower levels are a possibility if we do see some kind of reaction after the data comes out. However, there's no confirmation of us losing 602 yet. We're still holding the support. We have resistance around 608 and support at 602. And so far, we're just going back and forth and back and forth. So if we hold the support zone, we could attempt to rebound. We'll have to see if that ends up being the case or not, but we're still stuck within this range. So give this more time to develop. I'll be watching to see if buyers defend or not, but I do want to call out the fact that we did get a weaker close and the odds do favor us kind of like popping, maybe dipping a little bit lower. So the downside risk is a little bit higher for SPY, by the way. For ES, we're going to be watching to see if 60-40 holds. So far, we're barely holding support. We'll see if we get some kind of rebound or not off of this, but if we do dip a little bit lower, that could just be another buying opportunity for an end of the year squeeze. So this could dip a little bit more, so just keep that in mind. It looks a little bit weaker. Nvidia is barely holding support around 132. If we hold that, we could attempt to rebound for 137. There could be a risk lower, so we'll have to see what kind of reaction we get. For Bitcoin, run a nice uptrend here. We just have to hold our support. Otherwise, we could be pushing for 102,000. For others out there, we have Tesla. Tesla remains very strong. We started off with a small dip, but then we held support. And we got a lot of bullish news that came out because of potential deregulating of AI. So that could lead to a bigger push for 440 plus next week. So nonetheless, it remains more bullish. NQ is holding support very nicely. We could be retesting 21,692. We'll see if we bounce off that or not. If we don't bounce off this, we dip to about 21,537. So look for a small dip, whether it's we bounce here or here, but then there will be a bounce coming eventually for after a little bit more downside. The QQQ could dip for about 526 before it tries to bounce. But overall, it's still very resilient. It's still holding up very well, so there's no sign of it turning yet. Aapl could retest 246. We'll see if we bounce off this or not. But watch to see what kind of reaction we get. For the IWM Russell 2000, we're rejecting right here. We're looking for essentially 232 as our main target. This is going to line very closely with our 200 EMA. So we'll see if we get some kind of bounce between 231 and 232. For a coin, we're kind of stuck in this in the middle right over here. We have to see if we could hold above the 314 area. Otherwise, we're going to be at risk of coming down to fill this gap. Might come down to fill that gap before it tries to bounce, so just keep that in mind. Amazon might retest 226.7 before it tries to rebound. We're at support here. We have to bounce off this. Otherwise, 225 will come and then rebounds. For Meta, we're looking a little bit weaker. It could dip a little bit more closer to like 615 before it tries to bounce. So we'll see if that ends up being the case or not. For Microsoft, we're holding 446 very nicely. If we dip below this, we could be dipping closer to about 443, and we'll see if we rebound. I do think there's a risk of us dipping lower, and then we'll see what kind of reaction we get. And then for Google, we could be dipping closer to about 190 to 189, and we'll see if we bounce off that as well. So with that being said, as far as the market is going, I think there is still a risk of a little bit more downside. We haven't lost critical supports yet, but there is a risk of that. We'll have to see what happens next week. But I do see a risk of some more tech stocks dipping a little bit more, especially like the Googles out there. Tesla is still very resilient, so the market's still quite mixed. That's why the market looks like this. When you look at the heat map, the majority of stocks were kind of red, but there were some exceptions like Tesla and the others. So as far as NIO goes, there could be a little bit more downside coming early next week. That would not be a surprise. But there's going to be a big catalyst coming. The first one is going to be starting off, which is going to be NIO Day for next week. It's going to be happening like late on Friday in the US time, which is going to be different in China. And then by Saturday, we'll have the numbers, at least for how their sales and such are going. So we'll be ready for all of that and what their ambitions are for 2025. After that, we have more data coming out involving their growth, their sales, and then their overall potential for next year. I can't wait to see how things end up looking. That being said, I thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you guys in a couple of days for another update. I'll be back on Sunday to update you guys again. Until then, I appreciate you guys for listening and peace out.